Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's creative stream. Uh, so, yeah, it's been a while since I've done one of these again, but happy to be here to try and build something fun. If you're new to Creative Stream, basically on Wednesdays, every week we have someone from our creative team at Rive building something really cool and something unique. Sorry, my left earbud is acting funny. And it's just a fun little exercise to work in the editor or build something for runtime, an application, whatever it might be. And yeah, so it'll be like more loose form. If you guys have questions about anything, feel free to leave it in the chat. I'll try and take note of that throughout the stream as I can. It should be about an hour, but might be more or less depending on how things go. So yeah, if I guess also if you're new here, I'm Zach. I'm one of the developer advocates, relations people on the creative team at Rive, and so helping with um, using the Rive runtimes to integrate Rive animations and all that good stuff into your applications, websites, things like that. And so today, what we're going to be doing in this creative stream is we're going to be actually building a choose your own adventure-esque kind of tutorial, or I guess walkthrough in a code sandbox. And if you've seen my streams before, you know I like to use JavaScript, so I'm going to use the same again here. Oh, cool, we got someone from Twitch. Hey. So yeah, we're gonna be using the WebJS runtime with Rive, and I'll show you kind of what that looks like in a bit to build this choose your own adventure game that I've kind of generated from ChatGPT because I don't have a very imaginative um, uh, narrative to make up really quickly. So yeah, I'm just going to be doing that. And then yeah, we'll show how to do that with JavaScript. The main thing that we want to show off with using the Rive runtime is actually replacing text dynamically at runtime. So there's been a few questions in the past about, can you, change text in your applications based on an API from your databases, all that good stuff. And about a month or two ago, we released the new Rive text feature. So if you haven't checked that out, go play with it in the Rive editor. You can take a look at our docs and other YouTube videos to see how you can build text into Rive and do some really fancy stuff there. And we'll see a bit what that looks like. But also you can modify the actual text content in your applications because, of course, it's cool to have Rive text in the editor and static and defined at design time, but it's also cool to have that stuff dynamic at runtime. For example, if you're making a dynamic greeting for a user, you want to have that name property like Jill or Jack or Zach or whatever show up in the message, so it's a little more personalized. So we'll take a look at how to do that. But to start with, the project that we're going to be building, this Choose Your Own Adventure, is going to be based on this awesome community asset by Michael. If you haven't taken a look in our community, which you can find at our website, you'll find Draws Good. He's on our creative team. Michael, he makes awesome stuff. And this is one of the first things that kind of came out around the release of the Rive text feature. And so this cool little thing here, it's got some listeners, so you can hover over some parts of text runs, and these little icons pop up, which is really cool. And it's got this like box here that is very much in the like old Final Fantasy style era, and we got the mage here that makes it look really cool. And so we've got this welcome adventure, take the sword and shield and step out into your light to begin your journey. So yeah, that's basically what this is doing right now. And what I want to take a look at now is a kind of remix that I wanted to basically make this text box a little more dynamic, have different message prompts show up in here, and based on users' choices and things like that, because of the whole nature of choose your own adventure. Which I guess also to preface, if you're not familiar with choose your own adventure games, it's basically where there's some kind of prompt in this message box, right? And you're given one or two or more options that depending on the option that you pick, gives new prompts in this message, and basically it's a bunch of if-else statements, and kind of just choosing your own adventure, basically, of how you end up at the end, and maybe you have to restart if you fail and things like that. So it's a fun little text and simple game that we can try and implement with code, and it shouldn't be too complicated. But we'll take a look here. Okay, so I'm going to also now share my remix of this. Is this it? No, that's not what I wanted. Let me find that. Okay, I think it's this one. Yeah, so I can't zoom in too much, but here you'll see very much what Michael did. I'd made a few design tweaks here, so you can kind of ignore some of the the bad design parts that I edited because I was just trying to do something quickly here. But if I play the state machine, you'll see that we've got a text box that accommodates long text here. And what I wanted to add was, so this is basically what the thing did. What I wanted to add was a way to collapse the box. So if I created this input called toggle box, which is just a trigger input. And then it goes into this new outro animation, which I added. You can ignore this sword and shield that keeps popping up. Yeah, so like it collapses the box, and this is kind of where I want it to be like a nice little smooth transition of like, okay, a user has chosen a prompt. I'm going to close the message box, and now I'm going to reopen the message box with the next prompt based on the user's choice. So that's kind of the idea of the workflow that I wanted this text box to accommodate. And of course, the text box should expand dynamically if the text is longer or shorter and things like that. So oh no, I'm not sharing my screen. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I just got an internal note that I wasn't sharing my screen. Sorry. Okay, cool. I'm gonna just show that off quickly again. Thank you, Michael, for pointing that out. All right. So what I was sharing, and okay, yeah, I am. What I was sharing is the state machine, and it goes into this intro state. This is the thing that Michael had already built. And the thing that I added was like an outro animation that it's going to go to if I fire off this trigger input called toggle box. And that would make the actual text box collapse so that it gives the sense that like we're going to reload with a new prompt based on the user's choice. And then it goes into this intro to animation where it's a slightly altered version of the intro animation, but the wizard thing is not keyed. There's nothing about the wizard that's keyed. So basically it stays up because it was already keyed in its position in the intro animation. So intro 2 is basically doing the same thing as intro, animating the text using the modifier and expanding the text box based on the amount of text that's actually shown. And also just to take a quick look into the asset here, I want to go into the text box. You'll see we've got this text object. The thing that we're going to be messing around with is this text object. You'll see that we've renamed the text run to message, and you can see here on the property side the actual message that was that has the static text here. So what we'll be doing at runtime is basically targeting this text run called message and saying, hey, for this text run, use this text, and we'll be using a JSON file with different text prompts based on what the user chooses. Cool. All right, so now I'm going to present the actual docs just to quickly show. If you're not familiar with how to change text at runtime, you can check out our docs at help.rive.app. We're going to be using the JavaScript runtime. So if you go to the runtime section here, to keep remembering to share screen, if you go to help.rive.app in the runtime section, you can see get started and click down to WebJS. If you're using other frameworks like React, Angular, or if you're using other platforms like iOS, Android, and whatever it might be. You can check out the docs for that as well. But to actually see how you modify text, we have a specific page on text at runtime that shows some caveats to updating text at runtime and the APIs to be able to do so. So like for the high level, you'll see there's a way to get the actual text run value, but also set text with this API. So that's what we'll mainly be working with here. Awesome. All right. Moving on to the actual, actually one more thing I want to present before I get into the code sandbox. So I mentioned I was pretty lazy with trying to figure out how to create prompts for choose your own adventure. So this is where ChatGPT actually came in clutch. And I just wanted to share this real quick. Or I just wanted it to generate a short text-based choose your own adventure game for me. And it created this The Lost Treasure game. And it tells you, based on the decision that you make, which decision goes to the next step. So see if you enter the cave cautiously, you continue below. So this will be the next message that shown in that text box. Then you have more prompts and yada, yada. It goes so forth until you've actually made it to the end, or you die in the game and then you have to restart. So that's essentially what we're going to be working with here. Now, what I've actually done as some prep here, because you do not want to see me put that all in JSON. Let me go to the code sandbox. So we're going to be mainly working in this code sandbox today, and I've done some pre-configuration here. This is a parcel.js app, so I can kind of set things up pretty quickly. So I've got some HTML, and I've commented out the part where we're going to be showing like where you choose items for now. In the JavaScript side, this is where we'll spend the bulk of our time. You'll see that I've added the actual Rive JS runtime, the Rive app canvas. Excuse me. Oh my gosh, I'm not sharing my screen again. I don't do solo sharing enough, so I apologize everyone for all of the ramblings there. Okay, I should be sharing my code sandbox screen now. Perfect. All right, so you'll see here in the code sandbox, I've got my index HTML parcel app here, and I've also got my JavaScript file. This is where we'll be spending most of our time in. And you'll see I've already added the Rive app canvas, which is the JS runtime, into the project. So you'll see I've imported here and imported some things that we'll be using to actually instantiate Rive and get something showing on our screen. I've also already exported the Rive file from the editor. So I've dragged that in here and called that adventure.riv. And here's the part that was pretty timely, trying to figure out how to structure this choose your own adventure thing, but didn't want to do that in the stream because the stream would take like an extra 40 minutes. So I've basically taken all that prompt stuff from ChatGPT and formatted it in JSON. So we've got this welcome message, that's just a string. Then we've got this start object, which is where we'll start in. And then there's kind of a pattern to this. So there's this message property with a string of the actual message we'll be showing in the text box. And then we've got two option objects. So we've got option 1. If I scroll all the way down, you'll see we've got option 2 object. And each of these options have a label, and this will be like the actual prompt that we show in a separate box where a user can choose either option 1 or option 2. And if they choose the wrong option, each option will also have an end property with a message like that will show that basically prompts the user that, hey, you have to restart again. But if they actually choose the correct option, which for the first layer, I guess, if they choose option 1, there's this next object. And the next object is basically kind of like what this start object does. So next traverses into the next set of choices and the next prompt. So you'll see this is the next prompt that will show, followed by more options, more end behavior if you fall into the wrong path. And that goes for that keeps going on until you hit the end eventually. And once you hit the end, there'll be like this is done property. That's true. There are other ways to format, how to set up choose your own adventure, but this is kind of a quick and dirty way I was trying to set this up. So you'll see I've imported that JSON into my JavaScript via choices. And so choices will be an object that we'll be manipulating and some other variables here to grab some DOM elements to kind of set things up. So let's go ahead and get started actually putting something on the screen. So I'm going to instantiate Rive by doing new Rive. Source will be the actual Rive file. Now, this comes up quite often as like a question or point of confusion on, what do I put in my source property? It should be a string unless you're importing a buffer of the bytes of your actual Rive file, which is a little more complex. But for most part, you can either put in the URL of the asset of where your Rive asset is hosted. So like if you put it on a CDN or whatever, or you can have it as a path to a relative path from like your deployable site, wherever this JavaScript is living, to the actual asset. So like a lot of times if people are including Rive in Next.js projects or like SvelteKit projects, there's usually some kind of like publicly accessible folder that's deployed at the root level of your application. It's usually called like static or public. And that's where you'll keep like your favicons, your text files, any images, any of these static assets. This is where you'll include your .riv asset. For this code sandbox thing, this just happens to work with Parcel that I can just include this at the top level and just call it adventure.riv. But like if you're in a Next.js project, what you might do is you could probably still do adventure.riv, but if you've moved your static folder, static assets folder somewhere else, you might have to do some kind of relative route path like so. So you just kind of have to play around with this and see where is your Rive asset actually hosted. And there's other things you can do with Webpack to import your Rive file here at the top of your JavaScript using like a URL loader to load it in as a URI string. And then you can pass that in here. So there's other ways to kind of get around this, but you can check out the docs for more. All right, let's see. I'm going to set autoplay to true and set, I want to play my state machine. So I'm going to give it state machines, state machine 1. And as a quadruple check, I'm going to make sure I'm still sharing. Okay, cool. I am. No comments yet. Yeah, I appreciate everyone for helping with my horrible screen sharing abilities earlier. But yeah, welcome in. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the comments and I'll try and get to those every so often. I'm kind of working off of like one laptop right now. So I don't have, unfortunately, multiple monitors to kind of manage this stuff. And I'm going to add an onload. And you'll see all of this, all of these properties are laid out in the docs. So if you're confused on kind of what I'm doing and something that I said, it's probably more elaborated in the Web.js getting started docs. And so now I'm going to call Rive dot in, what is this? Resize drawing surface to canvas. This will ensure that this takes into account the device pixel ratio for the canvas and sizes the canvas appropriately. And oh, I need to provide it with the actual canvas element. So what did I call mine? Just canvas. Oh, I actually meant to add, I wanted to add something. I wanted to add some background music because sometimes I'll just definitely have dead silence while I'm working through stuff. So this isn't, it just makes it less awkward when I'm trying to debug something. Okay, cool. So you can see we've got that little wizard guy showing up on the screen with the initial text box. And that's cool and dandy. Let's make sure that trigger input works. So you remember how that text box kind of collapsed and then expands if I keep re-triggering the input. So I've got this message change input variable that's empty, and I want that to be assigned to that state machine input. So the way I'm going to find that state machine input, which was called, what was it called? Toggle box. You can find these in the editor. I'm going to call r.stateMachineInputs, new API, where the first parameter is the name of the state machine. And the second name is the actual state machine. Cool. Now let's just make sure this actually works. I'm going to do message change input dot fire. Make sure okay, that did not like that. Oh, I didn't actually look for. Okay, I got confused on the API. That's not actually how you find that toggle input. I need to do, so this state machine inputs will return an array of all the inputs in the state machine, and there are 3 in this one. So I need to go and find the actual input that I want. So I'm going to just do inputs name to toggle box. Okay, so as you can see there, after like a second, it collapsed the text box, which is that outro animation state that I added. And if I were to do it again, should re-expand. Cool. All right, perfect. So that's kind of the way we'll choose different prompts and things like that. So instead of set timeout, what I want to do is I want to first, let me go back to my choices JSON. I want to show that welcome message first. So I'm going to do choices.welcome, and I'm going to set it in the text box here. So if you remember, we have that text run called message, and we have that API that I showed in the docs called set text run value. So the first parameter I give it is the name of that text run in the editor. So you know, if you're a developer and you're handed off a Rive file, important things that you're going to need to know from your designer, or if even better, if you have editor access to that file, if you're on a team, for example, is being able to navigate the draw hierarchy to see what are the names of certain things that are meaningful. So in this case, the text object, the text run is meaningful because that's where you want to know, what's the thing that I want to change the value to. And so this first parameter is called message. And the thing that I want to change it to dynamically is choices. I think that's what I imported the JSON as. Message. And that didn't change it. Why? Let's see, r.set text run value. Text run name is message. And I'm doing choices.message. Let me just console log and make sure. Oh, it's undefined. Okay. Let's see. Oh, it's not message. It's choices.welcome. Idiot. Choices.welcome. Okay, so we've got our intro message showing up in the text box. Great. Let's actually create a helper function to actually set text a lot easier, so I don't always have to call set text run value. You just pass in a message. So I'm just going to create a helper function called set text. We'll call that message. I'm going to do r.set text run value. I'm going to be replacing the message, so I can just hard code that. Message choices dot. Now I can just do something like perfect. All right, so we've got choices.welcome showing. Now what do I want to do? I want to show the next prompt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and coordinate this a little with some set timeouts. After about 5 seconds, I'm going to say I want to collapse the message box. So I'm going to do message change input.fire. I'm going to nest another timeout here. Also, there are definitely probably better ways to do this, but this is my quick and dirty way of coordinating time. So, okay, after I fire and collapse the text box, I want to show my next message, which is start.message. Okay. Text choices dot start dot message. Start dot message. Okay, let's just make sure this works. So after 5 seconds, it collapses. Oh, I need to fire the thing again. Message change input.fire. Okay, so some wonkiness there with the transition, but we can come back to that at the end if we have time. The important thing is we got it actually functioning, where, okay, we changed out the text dynamically with the next thing in our JSON, which is the first prompt in our choose your own adventure. So we've got our first prompt. You're at a cave. Do you dare to enter and seek the lost treasure? Cool, cool, cool. I want to try and create a helper function for this, so I don't continuously have to create these set timeouts to coordinate things. I can just have a helper function that helps do that. So I'm just going to do function. I'm going to call it display message. So I'm going to do this. Takes in a message, so I don't need to do anything. And then it always collapses. Let's say it only takes like 300 milliseconds to collapse the box. Then after 3 seconds, we always show the message and fire it again. Okay. This might be reusable now. So if I here, I'm going to add that 5,000 milliseconds back. And I'm going to do display message with choices.start.message. Let me take this out. That. Got a question. Did you ask GPT to already do the JSON formatting, or did you run it through anything else to format it the way it is now in choices.json? Good question. I formatted it myself, so I feel I probably could have had ChatGPT format it for me, and that probably would have been now that I'm thinking about it, like the smarter option to do to make this a lot quicker. But I was just like, I just took the prompts and then I was like, okay, what is like a really quick and dirty way? I can just throw this in a JSON. That makes sense that I could maybe do this in like a kind of pattern or recursive format. And this was like the first thing I thought of, which again might not be the most efficient, but yeah, you could probably tell ChatGPT to be like, hey, can you throw this into like a JSON format that I could like traverse with JavaScript, and that could do it. So yeah, this was all manual, and this definitely took like several minutes to try and put together. But yeah, this is what we're working with for now. Definitely should have used ChatGPT more for that. All right. Cool. So looks like it did the animation, which is good. We don't have to have all these nested set timeouts here. I can just have this display message, and after 5,000 milliseconds, it's gonna call my helper function. And every time I throw up a new prompt, what I want to do is call this display message with the new prompt. And it's always going to have a 500 millisecond timeout before I call my trigger input to fire off the message change. And then another nested timeout to actually re-expand the text box with the new message prompt. So, yeah, okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to build out the text boxes to show the actual choices so I can actually advance the game. You'll see here I've got this like opt1 and opt2 menu DOM elements that I'm grabbing via JavaScript. And so now that's what we're going to be working with. So I've commented this out for now. Another really cool thing I'm actually going to shout this out really quick. So I'm going to stop sharing. I can do this in share screens. Okay, so again, in the beginning, I mentioned that the asset itself was very similar to like Final Fantasy-ish style, with like, you know, the blue boxes, like old Final Fantasy style. So I found a code pen that was open sourced, and they used some fancy CSS art to create this like Final Fantasy VII style menu. It's actually somewhat interactive, and has some cool sound effects too if you actually play with it. So I took this part of the HTML and CSS, and I wanted to use that in the stream. So shout out to Alejandro Granados for allowing me to use some of your stuff and CSS in my stream. Okay, stop sharing that. And go back to my code sandbox. So you'll see it's kind of got the start here once I uncommented this. At the crux, basically what the style is coming from is this unlisted HTML elements menu, and there's some CSS here that I won't go all the way over because it's got a lot of gradient stuff, but it's relatively straightforward here. Just some gradients, some padding, and a border to kind of give it this cool look that looks somewhat similar to like Final Fantasy style. And then I'm going to add the choices in here. You'll see here I've got two list item elements, opt1 and opt2. Totally forgot to share again, but here we go. Got two the unlisted element with two list item elements nested in here. This is where we'll show the prompt. So like that. These will be the prompts that we'll give to the user. And that will, depending on whatever they click, that's what's going to advance our game. So, close out. Cool. I'm going to go back here. How do I want to approach this? I've also got this empty variable called current choices. My idea is that I can keep a reference to where I am in my like nested JSON structure that I've concocted here. So choices, when I import it, gives me this object, and I start at the very top level. The idea is that I want to keep track of an object of like where the user is at. So now after they go through the self prompt, I'm at the initial message. So I want my choices object to start here now at start, where I have the message, the option, and the two option objects beneath it, or nested inside of it. And then depending on which they choose, for example, if they choose option 1, I want my choices object to now be at this level, at this layer, I guess. Or sorry, actually at the next layer, because that's what has the message and the two options. So this basically, I want to have a reference to, what variable, where I'm at. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set current choices after I do choices.start.message. I'm going to set current choices equal to choices.start. Now, what do I want to do? I want to okay. I set current choices equal to choices.start. And now I can set opt1 inner text be choices.option1. What is it called? Label. And opt2.innerText to choices.option2.label. Let's see what this looks like. Oh no. Oh wait, I did it wrong. Okay, that did it too soon. How do I want to coordinate this? Let me think. Maybe I'll add that to my helper function. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna alter my helper function a bit. Instead of the actual message for the text box, I'm just gonna pass it the choices object that I'm looking at. Yeah, choice level, I'm gonna call it. And sorry for working in JavaScript. This is, again, quick and dirty, so I'm not gonna try and deal with types right now. But yeah, this is going to be an object that has the message that we're going to put in here, and then the choice object or the option objects for the things that we're going to be displaying here. So if I have choice level, I'm going to do choice level.message here. And I'm going to set option inner text stuff in here as well. So I'm going to do choice level option1.label, same thing for option2. So then this should appear with the correct choices at the right time, because it's all in the set timeout. Oh no. Oh, I didn't actually give it the right. This needs to be choices.start. Okay, cool. It's a little jolty. You can add some CSS animations, and also you could probably have this done in Rive, but this would take me personally a bit to kind of set up. Excuse me. So yeah, for now I've just done it in HTML. But we were able to coordinate the text showing up with the actual prompt, so we don't have the prompt showing up before the actual text in the text box. Cool. All right, so do you dare to enter and seek the lost treasure? And now we have two options. So right now, if you click them, nothing happens. But that's why we have these references to the actual DOM elements, so we can add on-click handlers. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do opt1.onClick is equal to function. I don't need the event, but what I want to do when I click an element, I kind of want to like redo that. I want to use the helper function to do the message prompt again. But I also want to check like if I'm at end, and end is, for example, if I choose option 2, it has an end, and the end property should show in here. So first I'm going to do a check. Well, actually, no. I'm gonna keep that to the end. First, I'm gonna do kind of happy path. So what I want to do here is in opt1.click if current choices I should be able to use current choices dot option 1 dot end. Oh, sorry. I think happy path has the next object. Yeah. So I want to check for the next object because that'll mean I move on with the game. So if current choice dot option 1 dot next, okay, if it's next, then I want to set current choices equal to current choices dot option 1 dot next, because it will mean that gets me the next current choices at the next layer, and then I can display the next message. Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense. All right, so I'm going to use my handy helper function display message. With current choices. Let's see what this does. All right, so I've got the option 1 here, and if I click it, okay, it kind of collapsed it. Oh, cool. Okay, cool. So it didn't collapse it as much as the second one, but that might be because the text run still has value. The text run still has value, so what can I do? Yeah, I mean, it collapsed slightly, but it did the right thing. So, like, I set the next layer of the current choices variable. So now I should be, after option 1, I should be at my next object, where I have 2 new options, take the left path and take the right path. And I have a new prompt. So you come to a fork in the path, now I have 2 options. Cool. All right, so let me actually just duplicate this for option 2, because 2 is gonna have the same behavior. Now I also want to handle if I come across my end state. So if current choices dot option 1 dot end, I want to call display message. Actually, I'm trying to make this helper function do a lot. I'm going to see if that message. Think of edge cases. Basically, I want to use this even if I'm at the end, where I coordinate the collapsing and expanding the text box. So if I use display message here, I want to do choices equals current choices dot option 1. Change option 1. Yeah, so it'll have a label in it, and I think this should work. Same thing for choices 2. Okay, so I've got my first prompt. Now what happens if I choose the wrong option? Okay, cool. I think that works. So what was happening? What did I do? I basically added a conditional to my click where basically if it sees that it's the end in my JSON, or the end in the adventure basically, I'm setting current choices equal to the option 2 object, or whatever the wrong object is. So if I detect end in an option, I'm going to set current choices equal to this object, and what I'm going to do after that is still call display message with the option object, and I've altered the display message helper function slightly such that it detects if there's a message property, it'll display that, but if not, it'll display the end property. Cool. And yeah, you'll have to like restart the game. So if I replay this, I'm gonna choose the right option now. Cool. All right, so it got me to the next layer. What is the actual right one? It's option 1. I think it's option 1 all the way down. ChatGPT did not add variances to this game. So if I choose take the left path, cool. All right, I'm at the next layer. So as you venture deeper into the cave, you come across a room filled with glittering gems and gold coins. The treasure is before you, but suddenly the cave begins to tremble. Grab and run, or stay and investigate. Let's grab and run. Okay, now I think I've reached the end of the game because, yeah, once it does the next object, there's no like option 1 to show. So now I need to account for the actual end winning state. All right, so maybe similar to end, what I'll do is I will set current choices to the next object and then check if is done is true and just show message. So if current choices dot option 1 dot next look for that is done Boolean property that signals the game is over. I'm going to set current choices is equal to current choices dot Option 1 dot next. Next. And display message with current choices. Oh, I think I need to alter the helper function too. All right, so choice. This will show the end message, but I need to alter this to make sure it doesn't show more options when I finish the game. So if choice level dot let's see, is done. Okay. So enter the cave cautiously. The cave is dimly lit, and the air is cold and damp. You come to a fork in the path. Alright, I take the left path. The treasure is before you, but suddenly the cave begins to tremble. Grab it and run. Hopefully it should show the end state here. Awesome, it showed the end message, which should be this long thing. So you've grabbed as much treasure as you can. You've escaped with your life and bag full of riches. Congratulations, you found the lost treasure and made it out alive by choosing option 1 all the way down the line. So that's not a super fun game, but you could change it up. You could alter what ChatGPT did and create even more or less nested layers and more options. I think there were some places where like ChatGPT did not actually give me prompts, like for if you chose the wrong option. So I had to like figure out some things there. So I think in the beginning, if you choose the wrong option, yeah. So do you dare to enter and seek the lost treasure? Turn back and leave the cave. What a shame. Yeah. So it's yeah, it just kind of ends there. I would like to fix one thing though, and that's like when it tries to collapse, it only collapses to it doesn't collapse all the way. And I think I need to set text to be like empty string or something. So like, let me try set text. Let me just try space. I don't need this option anymore. Okay, so that was quite sudden. Let me try that again. Okay, so enter the cave cautiously. Okay, so it was kind of a jolt there where it like dropped the text, but there might be a way at design time to account for like the sudden drop in text, because I think the rig is set up that like the text box will just automatically shift to like automatically what do I call it? Expand or collapse to however amount of text is there without it being an actual keyed value, but maybe not. I'll have to consult with Michael on this. The other way we could do this is, I mean, like, if we really, really want to get nitpicky about it, is create some kind of like interpolation with code so that I'm continuously shrinking the amount of text that shows up in the text box and interpolating it, subtracting each character from a string based on like some time frame, like over 2 seconds. So doing something similar to like what you could do in the editor, but with code, to make the collapse and expand a little more smooth as we change out the text values dynamically. Let's see, we got one more thing here. So that's really cool. So technically you could also prepare timelines with different animations and also trigger those based on the response and option chosen. Yeah, so that's actually what also trigger those based on. Yeah, this is basically what the state machine is. So I'm gonna stop this real quick and then go back to the editor. So if you missed this in the beginning, I can't zoom in too much here, unfortunately, but this is kind of what the state machine is. So there's all these different timeline animations, for example. In the state machine, there's a layer here, and it's got this kind of connected graph that you see. So when we start the state machine, we play this intro animation. And so you can see here that just flows in the text box with the text and brings the wizard up. Also in the state machine, you can see we've got this outro animation, which what it's doing is just shrinking the text box. Not super well because this is an animation I made and I was not clever enough to do some cooler animation stuff with it. But you can see here, that's all. There's that outro animation. And then we've got this intro to animation. All separate animations, of course, right? Where it's similar to the first one, but it's just expanding the box. It doesn't do anything with the wizard. And what I mean by that is the wizard is not keyed, has no keyed properties specifically in this intro to animation. And so with the state machine, we've got these 3 different timeline animations, like you say. And yeah, that's what they're labeled here. And I've laid them out in the graph. You can, drag these into the graph. All of these you can do however many you want. Already got this set up. And then you can basically create the transitions between the different animations. We call that animation mixing. And we've got some documentation and tutorials from our Rive 101 series on kind of what that looks like. So if you're kind of unfamiliar with those topics and want to see more in depth, you can check our YouTube playlist for Rive 101 on that. And our creative team does a really great job of explaining what happens there. But basically, when I play the state machine, it goes into this state, and you can see it's kind of highlighted in blue, and I can go to the next animation state by transitions. You can see these transitions with little arrows. I can create transitions by just dragging from one state to the other. You can see here, I'm going to create another transition. I'm going to delete that. But when I create these transitions, you can transition between different animations based on different conditions. And so a condition here could be like if an input is true or false. So here's some Boolean inputs. This one's for showing the shield or not. These are Boolean checkbox inputs. But the ones I'm working with in this layer specifically are a toggle box input. Oh no. Oh no, I'm so sorry. I totally forgot to share again. I'm literally the worst at that. Okay. All right. Yeah, so we got this state machine, right? We've got these 3 animations. Let me play them again just really quickly. These are all separate animations, all keying different things, and they're all separate, right? I knew I just had a feeling I totally forgot to share again. Because what happens when I click share screen from the software we're using, which is what is this? StreamYard. What happens is it just jumps to your tab, and then it shows you that it's sharing the tab, but you have to actually click and display the tab that you're trying to share. Anyway, it's some coordination that there are much better people on the team that can do that than myself. But anyway, you saw those 3 different animations. You can drag these animations onto the state machine graph. You can see here, and you can do however many you want. And so you got 3 different animations that you drag onto the graph, and you create transitions between them. So you create transitions by dragging, or sorry, you can see this little dot here. You can basically create a transition by dragging from one state to the other. And these transitions have certain properties. So you can set the duration of it, but also, more importantly, these conditions. So a condition could be if a state machine input, which are these things. For example, this is a box, checkbox here, which is kind of like a Boolean input, you can imagine. Or not imagine, it is a Boolean input. This Boolean input toggles whether or not the shield shows up. That happens in a different layer, but I won't get into that. I've created a transition here where if toggle box is fired, toggle box is this like circular radio button looking input. If I fire that, it goes to the outro animation. And so there's this animation mixing that happens between the intro animation and the outro animation. And it kind of mixes based on the keys that are based on the keyed properties on these different animations. Again, it's much better explained in our Rive 101 series, but that's kind of how you transition between one animation to another. And you can create these transitions. You can add multiple conditions. I just have this simple like toggle box is fired. It goes to different animations. You can see here these transitions are very similar. So I have a transition going from outro to intro 2, and intro 2 to outro based on the toggle box condition. And so yeah, as I'm firing this, you can see visually on the graph, which animation it's mixing towards and ramping off of. And so this is what that's doing. But hopefully that answers your question. Yes, you can. Rive has the ability, like at runtime, you can play singular animations if you want. That's not really, the thing that we're going for. We really want people to discover, the state machine where you can mix different animations together and transition to different animations based on conditions. So you as a designer or a person building in the editor get complete control over how your animations mix between each other. And you define that logic so that you don't have a developer trying to create these complex, for example, CSS animations that transition between, one thing to another with code. And then you have this whole back and forth on, did I get this looking right? You can define all of this in the editor, export that as a Rive file, and then that just kind of works. So you'll notice like as I was kind of like working through the code sandbox, which I'll share again here, and I will make sure that I'm actually sharing. You see in the code sandbox, like I didn't really have any thing that was like, hey, go from timeline animation intro to timeline animation outro and outro to intro 2. Really what I was doing, most of this code is really coordinating when I fire off that state machine input that drives that transition. So that state machine input called toggle box, which is that thing that I fired off in the editor. That's the thing that I got a reference to with code. And so you can see here, if you're familiar with JavaScript, you can get an array of state machine inputs and then find the one that you want. And then you can use that all throughout your code base to basically drive that transition. And in this case, I'm driving that state machine input with some set timeouts, and also based on whatever the user clicks here. So if I choose the right path, I think I die. Yeah, we fell into a pit of snakes. You can try again. So yeah, the state machine inputs are really what drive the animation. That's really the differentiator for Rive. And yeah, it makes it a lot cleaner, especially at runtime, so that your animations are more predictable. The designer knows what to expect at runtime, and all you really need to do is just hook in the code to plug in the Rive file, tell it what you want to play. In this case, the state machine 1 state machine. And then yeah, a lot you can do with code for just manipulating the state machine inputs. In some cases, you might not even need to manipulate anything at all, depending on how complex your animation and state machine are. So that's pretty nice. So yeah, okay, I'm gonna hide that one. Thanks again for your questions. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I know we're up at an hour here, so I'm not gonna do too much more with this, but I'm gonna share this code sandbox link, which is public. And I'll put that in the description box and on our YouTube video once this uploads, so that you can take a look at it. You can fork this code, and you can do it for free. Yeah, you can create a code sandbox account for free, or you can even just fork it on your own local machine and play around with it there and make it a lot more pretty. But yeah, that's pretty much what we're doing here. I didn't mess around with things like layout and how beings are positioned here, but I mainly just wanted to show you guys how to get the functionality of like a choose your own adventure-esque kind of thing set up, how you can set text run values dynamically and get that going. So yeah, any other questions? I'll hang out for like another minute. Yeah, again, we do these live streams every Wednesday. We also have weekly Tuesday live streams too that are more with the entire creative team, and we kind of go over product updates, announcements, and things like that. But this one is more kind of like a solo, one-person kind of stream where we're just creating something either in the editor or we're building something at runtime like we just did right now with JavaScript. This is something that could easily be done with our iOS runtime as well, or Flutter, if you're into like iOS development, Android development, whatever it might be. And yeah, also feel free to jump into our Discord channel if you have questions about what you saw today. And our whole team is there. I'm more than happy to help community out. So yeah, hopefully this was helpful. I don't see too many other questions, so I'm going to call it now. Appreciate y'all for hanging out, and yeah, thanks for being part of the creative stream. We'll see you next time.